A glance in the mirror. Chapter 43. College Farm. As with all house sales, things do eventually click, and a buyer found. And this was just as well, for Josephine had seen the near-perfect property in Thornborough, a village close to the school, not far from the shops at Buckingham. The owner was a most successful freelance graphic designer. A college of Oxford University originally owned the farm. Terry was keen to look at another, smaller property, but Josephine was very clear that this was what she wanted. It was a 72-foot-long thatched delight, having many original features. The studio complex gave Josephine all she needed for a workplace at home and for any additional workers. Josephine's position with Hill Samuel Financial Services was going from strength to strength. The company had been created just 20 years before by a merger of M. Samuel & Co. and Philip Hill Higginson Erlangers Limited. The following year the company started in Australia. The Australian government proposed making the company independent, establishing Macquarie Bank Limited. A year later, Hill Samuel merged with TSB Group plc and suspended trading. Finally, in 1995, TSB Group merged with Lloyds Bank. However, that was all in the future. As they contemplated buying College Farm, Hill Samuel Financial Services was, in its ascendancy, considered one of the best insurance companies in London. It didn't take long for Terry and Josephine to conclude that College Farm was ideally suited, especially as it was so near the girls' school. And this persuaded Terry to retire early and open up an artwork studio to cater for local businesses. The small stable at the front of the property would make a perfect artwork studio. Computer-generated type was in its infancy. He could start at the bottom and develop his own typesetting and page makeup system to improve his designs, thereby offering a complete service. In the closing months of 1985, Rupert Murdoch began to discuss with the print unions a new agreement to begin the new year, and as usual it involved pay, hours and other conditions. It was perfectly clear that there would be repercussions to the introduction of a reel-to-reel lithographic web offset printing, the introduction of a colour supplement and colour within the normal page layout and pictures. Murdoch wanted to include flexible hours, a no-strike clause, the stopping of white cards, one-man, one-job applications, the closed shop arrangements, and the introduction of new technology. Little did the unions realise that Murdoch had been negotiating with the Electricians Union, EETPU, to take over operating the print machines if there was a strike, or negotiating became protracted. It became obvious that he did not want an agreement, but was stirring up trouble to issue dismissal notices. Even in the London College of Printing, the conversation was all about what News International was doing. Terry could see where this was leading to, a strike, and with that knowledge it propelled him to take early retirement, which was being offered to lecturers who were teaching a superseded specialism. The trade union movement would never be the same in Britain. It was the event 6,000 print workers did go on strike with the Rupert Murdoch Group. During their first year at College Farm, one of Josephine's clients declared he wished to sell his Spanish home next to the golf course in Bernia, not far from Altair. This opportunity had occurred whilst Josephine was in Spain, sorting out his financial matters. She immediately looked the place over and recognised its worth, agreeing to think over the proposition. Terry and Josephine gave the idea a great deal of thought, going out there for a few days to look over it and check out the neighbourhood. The upshot was a quick purchase, and they became Spanish property owners. This was the start to their love and captivation of Andalusia and all things Spanish. It was at this time that Josephine had developed effective business links with executive search consultants Overton, Shirley and Barry. Josephine's office now housed her team of advisors, who all worked in the local vicinity, with their head office at St James's. In January 1986, Terry went skiing for the first time with Josephine, who was a previous skier. He was 48 and not expecting to take up a new hobby, which was to last so many years and prove to be an annual delight. Josephine had won the right to be at the Hill Samuel Convention in Zermatt. The resort was lovely. No cars or trucks, just horse-drawn sleighs with the collar bells jingling from their harness. The Matterhorn was the backdrop to most ski runs, and the pistes were lined by its trees, laden down by the snow, which sloped down to typically alpine-style log houses. There were many who had not skied before, and so instructors were organised to take us through our paces. It was all so new and exciting, and fortunately Terry advanced to the next class very quickly. It will be ever etched upon his mind how wonderful that week was. The venue was splendid, being a top-class resort. The accommodation at the hotel was a delight, being typically Tyrolean, made of wood in the Swiss style. The snow was terrific that year, and the weather sunny and warm. What an introduction to a wonderful sport. When they arrived home, Terry started his freelance design business in the small cottage on the drive. It was planned to give a specialist treatment to stationery design, menus and show cards. His first clients were the solicitors Hallward and James, and soon after a restaurant in Buckingham wanted menus and cards, closely followed by Roger and Thelma's Kennels and Cattery. Josephine's next convention was held in Miami and Boca Raton. They flew out on Concorde to Washington. It was a tremendous experience, being whisked through the air at over twice the speed of sound in such luxury. Then onwards to Miami by special chartered jet. Boca Raton, Florida, on the Atlantic Ocean south of Palm Beach, within easy reach of the Everglades and Pompano Beach. It was at that convention that guests who had an interest in another country other than England were invited by the Hill Samuel management to fill in a questionnaire stating what their interests were in that country and whether they would like to introduce financial services there, be an advance guard. Josephine complied, detailing our house in Spain and setting out a business plan to start a business, illustrating her report by explaining that most wealthy people at the time populated southern Spain in the region of Gibraltar, where they could fly in and out and do their business transacting in English, play golf and feel more connected to England. Little did Terry and Josephine know that that was just what the management were looking for, an opening into the Spanish peninsula, Portugal and Gibraltar, and someone who had the expertise and knowledge to back it up. The financial services industry was going through another one of its periodic booms, expanding across all markets. There was, at the time, no local agencies in the peninsula catering for expatriates. They had to fly back home to secure business contracts and products, so that it was deemed to be a prime target for investment banks. Very quickly her offer was taken up, and her business plan accepted. She was to go out to Spain, set up her own base, which would enable her to service and sell new products to new and existing clients from the border of southern France, Spain, round the coast into Portugal, taking in the financial centres of Gibraltar. Although there were few existing salespeople working there, they did not have Josephine's status. However, they would now come under her jurisdiction if the move went ahead. Josephine was further enticed by being offered a directorship when the business was up and running. Almost immediately, they put the plan into action. Helen was taking her O-levels, planning her next move into the field of drama and dance. Anna had already made her position clear. She wanted to be a day girl. Terry's brother Stan, now retired, just about coming to terms with his affliction, to the extent that he was deciding to spend the rest of his life abroad in a warmer climate. He discussed his position and his hopes for the future. He concluded that perhaps Spain provided all that he was looking for, and when Josephine and Terry went out to Spain in the summer of 1986, they invited Stan along to join them and sample Spanish life by staying at their house in Bernia Golf, Altea. This he did, and was impressed by the facilities and the surrounding countryside. Now that Terry and Josephine had decided to accept the challenge of opening a new office in Spain, they came to the conclusion that they should sell their house on the eastern coast and move to the west, where there was more affluent clients. Unfortunately, the house wouldn't do for Stan, as he was looking for a bungalow on flat land that would take a wheelchair. It was necessary to have 2 bedrooms, kitchen, bathroom, and hopefully a swimming pool. As the object was to be self-sufficient, relying on his pension to provide for Pauline and for Tim, the project had to be kept on a very tight budget. A property which would not require all his savings was the order of the day. These specifications almost demanded a new build in an out-of-town location. Considering his health and obvious benefits of being in a hot, dry climate, Spain was the simple choice, especially now that the coastal region was being developed and incoming capital from foreign speculators and the European Economic Union were bolstering up the Spanish economy. The timing appeared almost perfect. The coastal region was like the Klondike. That visit convinced Stan that what he was doing was right, and within a space of a year both Pauline and Tim were on their way with him to start life afresh, new horizons and challenges, leaving behind a number of bad memories and unfortunate experiences. One of Josephine's clients had a litter of puppies. She happened to mention that Terry might be interested in one. He was later sent round to have a look, and of course he was captivated by the only one remaining, an 8-week-old run to the litter, which was a bitch. Terry was landed with having to make a decision. Of course, he was bowled over and accepted. It was a wonderful moment, one that he never regretted, and when he got back home he hid the puppy in his studio, waiting for the right moment when he would show her off. Terry had made up his mind that he would call it Ruff, after its wonderful white fur collar. He showed off the puppy the next morning, having Ruff in his pocket in his dressing gown, with her head just peeping out. And everyone naturally fell in love with Ruff. A new star was born in his life, a mixture of West Highland Terrier and Border Collie. She was an immediate success with the girls when they came home that weekend. Their first job was to make a home for her out of a cardboard box, with her name boldly written on the front. And after training, which only took a few weeks, Ruff became a main player in the scheme of things, never left out of anything. She would wait patiently for the postman on the stairs every day, and thereafter followed Terry everywhere, never needing a lead, but always walking at his heel. That Christmas, 1986, Simon and Rebecca stayed in the coach house studio. Anthony was out in the photographic darkroom, Chris and the girls upstairs. It was a crowded house, and it took all our joint efforts to see that they were all fed and watered. It was Terry's task to organise a number of party games to interest them all. The girls became weekly boarders, now that Terry was at home for good. The plan was to make them day girls as soon as practical, when the family were all settled into their life at Thornborough. Every Friday Terry would pick them up from school and take them home to start their weekend. Their washing was put in the machine, ready to be ironed for Sunday, to start all over again. Homework got out of the way on Saturday, and any other preparations made. Helen's allergies prompted special care in such things as food preparation, and her eczema made as imperative. Dust was kept to a minimum. Initially all went well with Terry's business, having a number of commissions to look after. However, it soon became apparent that to try and cook, run the house, maintain the property, mind the girls, something would have to give. If the girls were to become day girls, Terry's freelance work would have to be restricted or stopped altogether. Running this large house and doing the maintenance was proving to be impossible. The grass cutting alone took 1 full day a week, and the hedging and ditching another. It was early spring, 1987, that we had a tremendous thunderstorm, which carried on for many hours, the rain pouring down. It flooded the surrounding fields and lanes. The stream down the road was swollen to the extent that you couldn't walk over the bridge. The ground quickly became saturated, and the ditches and land drains couldn't cope with a sudden flash flood. The water ran down the garden and found its way into the house, through the large living room into the underfloor heating system, soaking the carpets as the water flowed through. It became essential to dig out a land drain across the lawn, lay a large perforated pipe linking into the existing drainage system, which took the water to the stream. They employed a husband and wife team 2 days a week, Fred and Lorna. Fred concentrated on the garden and paddock and helped Terry dig out the land drain and lay the pipes to link into the main drainage system. He was then to follow on and do some ditching and hedge laying. Lorna's job was to do the usual in the house. The stables and Josephine's office were very much Terry's preserves, which, coupled with his own studio work and the front garden, was a continuous round of maintenance. Later they had the builders in to lay a brick terrace and patch up the studio roof, which was leaking. Terry's own business began to suffer. He would have to stop altogether, or the house would have to be done and take a back seat. It was very fortunate that Josephine's business was going from strength to strength, and she loved it. Having a secure base allowed her to expand and develop the business, taking on 2 additional advisors to work from the same office, in the large studio, which was plenty big enough to accommodate them. The other string to Terry's bow was painting a range of dog portraits to display at country fairs, to seek commissions, and whilst the pictures were finished, the ultimate aim was never fulfilled. He was offered the job of resident portrait painter at Champneys Health Farm near Tring. Terry was delighted to accept, this being a feather in his cap likely to be a source of many commissions, and soon after starting he was commissioned to paint Champneys Health Club as a presentation picture, copied as a print to present to retiring members of staff, the original to be hung in the hotel library. The painting was later reproduced for greetings cards and notelets. It was a very busy time, travelling backwards and forwards, on call for residents' portraits. Terry had an art exhibition for the Waterways Commission held in a local gallery in Buckingham, 10 pictures associated with the canals and their workings. A partnership with Sue Ruler, a local house builder, was on the cards until Duncan Kirkby, Terry's best man, invited him to become a partner in the conversion of a chapel in Buckingham, close to the university, to convert it into 3 separate homes. However, the proposed move to Spain cut across all these ideas, which was perhaps just as well. Duncan went on ahead with the project himself and found that it was indeed a very profitable undertaking. Flo and Iris had been persuaded to move house to be near the sea, closer to Flo's other daughter. This was unfortunate, for they would have been better off staying where they were. Terry was very sorry to see them go, being such good friends. However, their house was for sale, an opportunity for the boys, a house ideal for Anthony and Chris. They managed to secure a joint mortgage, and after the ladies had left, Terry started almost immediately to convert the house with the help of a local decorator, to separate the upstairs from the lower portion, to give the boys their own separate flat, while sharing the bathroom and kitchen. The house was completely redecorated and carpeted, with curtains made and hung, a new kitchen and bathroom installed and plumbed in. The whole venture was a success and came at just the right moment. It was a good first move for them both, giving them independence and enough experience to work out their next move.